Dr. Jazz.
So
Dr.
appreciate it also to
Good.
taking the time. So
Well, good. Well,
you know,
it's not, I'm glad you're,
yeah,
the washboard is such a different thing for me, um, but it really is special to me.
yeah.
Uh,
It's so unique. I mean, we can start with this basically because I mean, I saw on YouTube there's like from a Patricia Nicholson birthday benefit celebration, you and Matthew Shipp.
yeah, yes.
And man, it's just like it's incredible. I've never seen anything like that and or heard. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did you come up with this idea? You added all these different things, of course, to it. But where does the whole concept with you and the washboard and this extended washboard come from, actually? I mean,
Well, it came from actually really by accident. Um, I was asked to sub with a band called the Ebony Hillbillies. It's one of the only black string band based in New York City,
oh wow,
and one of the few left. The Mr. Black Hillbillies is Enrique Prince. He's a violinist,
okay,
and he started the group. And I've known him for a long time. And in 2007, he had asked me if I would play with the band, and I was out of town, and there's no way he needed somebody right away, and I couldn't do it. So 3 years later, in 2010, Dave Gibson, drummer from Philadelphia, who had been doing it back when they couldn't get me in 2010, Dave
mm,
started doing it. So Dave called me and asked me, look, he had to go out and he needed a sub the next day, 2 days after, I guess, 2 days after. So there was no rehearsal. I had a washboard that I had collected. The washboard itself, I just got it because I thought it had magic in it. My friend Evelyn Blakey is a great singer. She passed in 2007, and I helped clean up her apartment.
mm,
And in her apartment was this old washboard. Had been used. She used it to clean. And I just thought that the board had magic in it because I'm sure she washed. I know she washed her clothes, but I'm bet that she washed some of her father's clothes. Her father was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers.
then
Blue
it
Enid.
had the spirit, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Wow,
that's the
wow,
washboard that I had.
oh
And so
wow,
I showed up, and they were playing in the subway at Times Square as part of Music Underground, the MTA the Municipal Transit Authority. They had organized things. So we're playing in the subway. I get down there, and Dave had a way of putting his washboard on a stand, so he would rub this way. I couldn't put it on. I didn't have the right kind of clamp. So they said, come on, we got to play. So I just put it in my lap.
oh wow,
And
okay,
Dave had given me 4 shotgun shells because he had learned about that from,
yeah,
uh, what's it? Carolina Slim, who is washboard, drummer, guitar, keyboard player, but he was an elder. And I did get to meet him. I went out, he lived in Jamaica, Queens, and I did go out there to meet him and hang with him for a day.
mm,
And he passed not too long after that. But he told me that shotgun shells was part of the tradition in the Southeast, Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, that part of the United States. I had never heard of it. All I knew was spoons or
yeah,
knife handles
yeah,
or thimbles. but the shells give a whole entirely different sound,
Yeah.
a whole different presence. And so I put the shells on and started playing. And the music, I didn't know specifically know the tunes, but I knew the genre. I'd heard it,
Right.
in life. I grew up in the South, and I grew up doing segregation, so
Mm.
that it was a connection, and that. So I just played and was playing, and all of a sudden the music was happening. What I was playing was working with the music, and then it was like my hands started doing things. I don't know how they knew to do it, but it would fit the music. It was like I just became this vessel. It wasn't me doing it. It was something coming through me. So
Mm.
after it, I said it must have been my ancestors. And but it was this magical thing because the music was happening. There was something special in it, and so I ended up being a member of the band. I did it, and then Dave came back, and he went away again. And he went away when they had some festivals to do, and so I ended up doing them, and I just ended up doing it. And I played with him for like 7 years.
Oh wow.
And in the process of playing in the subway, first thing was I was going through boards like every 4 weeks because of the edge of the shells would chip up the wood.
Oh yeah.
And I was playing in the subway. You had to play so hard. I wasn't amplified. So I had to really hit, and even the metal would crack.
Oh.
It would get bent up and then crack, so I had to get the new boards, and I discovered that they were there in New York City at the Ace Hardware store. And so I started doing that, but then I said it was costing not a whole lot, but $25 every
Sure.
4 weeks, $30 every 4 weeks gets So I got called a manufacturer, and so they start sending me some at discount. And another thing that I realized that I didn't like just the raw metal sound, so I ended up taping the back of the board. Should I get it so I can show
Oh, come
it
on,
to you?
please. Oh, please. Oh, that would be amazing.
It's okay. Let's see if we can see it. So the back of the board,
Mm-hmm.
I taped with golf. What do you
Yeah.
call it? Gaffer's tape. I gaffer's tape, and I experimented a little bit to figure out how much tape, but it's a lot, and it really made it drier.
Yeah.
It didn't make it not so tinny, more click than ting ting ting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that sound better. And then to kind of help preserve the wood, you can see where it's even with polyurethane. This is from subway time,
Oh wow.
and so that's kind of damage that got done in the subway. And there's a crack here where the metal is
Yeah.
split from this. This was one of the subway ones, but this wood is teak wood. Most of it is like pine or softwood, but what they do is they get at the factory, they just get wood, excess wood from things. And it happened that they had some teak. And so the manager, the person I was dealing with, he said, we got some teak wood, because I was telling him how it went. And so they sent me, I actually had about 6 boards made out of teak.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which gives a much better sound. But then with the polyurethane on it, and I didn't even count the number. I just put it on and then put another. I would imagine at least 5 or 6 coats.
Oh wow, man.
But what it did, it centered the sound of the wood, the board. And I also glued the metal around. And so it ended up being like a drum head.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
as well, you know. And
Different, yeah.
so but it's something that evolves as that, you know, it's like, wow, I got to change this. I don't like this sound. And it's evolved into this is the board now. Then when I first was playing with the hillbillies and that, it worked so good. And I felt that I used all the musical knowledge that I used in any other situation.
Yeah.
And it seemed to come out through the board. You know, the board didn't hamper it. I could play. It really responds to my touch.
Yeah, that's so important too.
And touch to me is how we express on percussion, on drums and that. It's touch, whether it's a stick or whatever it is. But you know, how much weight, how far into the head we go, and
Yeah.
you know, and all that. So the board really responds to the touch. And at first, I was doing the hillbillies, you know, the black string band music, and some of this music was so uplifting.
Yeah.
We were playing tunes from from 1700s on up to through the 1900s.
Wow.
And these tunes were so uplifting, you know, and I never figured out what it was, but you could see it. And when we would play in the subway, people would be going to work. We could go play from 8 to 12. People going to work, and you see them, they go and they hear the band, and they stop,
Yeah.
and you see them transform just from the, you know, the music, the energy, and they go smiling. And after when we stopped going, people would, where are you? What happened? You know, it was really an experience that I hadn't had.
Yeah.
Even playing drums, that it's a whole different attitude. So with the board, it's like you got directly to people. And I found that even when I went away, played by the board in different situations other than the Ebony Hillbillies, something about the sound of the board makes people smile.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's a great thing to me to be able to do that. I used to have that experience when I was playing in college. We're in a marching band. Our marching band, this was back 1961 to 65.
Oh.
And we played halftime shows for the Philadelphia Eagles, the Giants,
Oh, wow.
the Baltimore Colts, the Redskins. And so the energy and the whole experience was you come out the tunnel into the stadium, feel, you know, it's nice to make people feel nice,
Happy.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
happy, yes. And that's what the board does for me. It gives me a chance to make people smile, to be happy, you know, and it also carries historical knowledge for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You know, the board itself has all of this experience as going from a tool to, you know, a source of drudgery, as I say, to a source of pleasure and escape, you know, relief.
Yeah.
This tool, and it's a tool. And even now, when I play, people get amazed that I can get so much out of
Out of it.
this
Yeah.
simple thing.
Yeah.
So it's become kind of a mission. Another part of the board is that it made me to look at my own history, my family history, and it connected me to the story of my father's father, because he was born in slavery.
Sure. Yeah.
And he was young, born in 1860. So when the Civil War ended, he was 5 years old. But he ended up staying, working on his father's farm. His father became a sharecropper on the same land that he had been enslaved. Now he was a sharecropper. So you don't really own the land,
Yeah.
because you raise crops and that, but somehow they did get to own property. And in my research and going down to the Eastern Shore of Virginia, where he was born, I discovered there was a big family there and a lot of history. They had land. They eventually had owned land and then sold their land to the railroad that went from the Eastern Shore to bring in stuff from, because the Eastern Shore has docks,
Yeah, yeah.
ships came. In fact, the first ships, the first slave ships landed at the Eastern Shore before it went into the Chesapeake Bay to Jamestown and that way. They first landed there. So all of that, I had no thing, but the washboard kind of led me into it. So it's become my thing.
Yeah, it's like, how did you then incorporate it when you play, let's say, a duo with Matthew? How do you approach a situation like that?
Well, I approached that. I feel like any music that I played with the drum set, I can play with the washboard.
Okay.
And when I was first beginning it, I said, man, I think you can just play music, not just one kind of music. So I went out, started going, sitting in with different types of music, different bands, and every time it worked. And I played with a band in Roaring Twenties. They used the washboard then, and that I played with that music and it fit in right there. I went up in Harlem and jazz, the clubs there. It worked.
Yeah.
It worked there. Out in Queens, I sat in with a couple of R&B bands.
Oh wow.
And it worked there. And it's like anywhere I go, there's something about the sound that with the shells that has presence, but it has its own space. It doesn't block out anybody else. Yeah. And I had this experience, and my daughter lives in Atlanta, and I went down there, and there's a club down there, 10 ATL, and I went to a jam session that they had there, and I sat in, and I was playing, and I looked up, and this whole crowd of people with cameras.
Oh wow, man! Yeah,
doing videos, like, because they've never seen it. Everywhere, a lot of places I go, and they say they never, if even they know the washboard, they never seen it played that way.
Yeah.
And I just think it's an instrument that's capable of playing music. I've been going to Poland on a regular basis.
Really?
For like 12 years now. On my own. I started going with Billy Harper. The first time was in 1980.
Yeah.
The first gig that I got with Billy Harper was a tour, a State Department tour, and it went to Poland was one of the things. So that was my first thing. And then 1999, we went back for the first since 1980.
Wow.
And I went with him then. But then I've been going to, since 99, I've been going to Poland almost every year. And I was going for 2014, 2015, I was going there enough, so much that I had an apartment in Szczecin. Szczecin, Poland was my home base.
Really? Oh man, I didn't know this. Wow.
Yeah, I was there more than I was in the U.S. in 2015.
Yeah, it's a strong scene. I mean, for improvised music, it's incredible. I mean.
Yeah, Poland. Yeah, but I have this theory that they are related. We share something, and we being enslaved African culture in the U.S. and the Polish, because we've had to survive in situations, environments where our cultures were being destroyed. Mm-hmm. We were dominated by another culture that wanted to destroy, and to be able to survive in that and still maintain your culture,
Yeah.
something happens in that. And
Yeah.
cultures that haven't had to do that are different.
Yeah.
And so I bet my theory is that the Polish, and that's with that thing, there's something in their music that is soulful. I mean, from Chopin, Penderecki,
Yeah. Lutosławski, all these guys. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
all these
Yeah.
guys. And then the musicians I played with in Poland, my Sylvester Ostrovsky is the tenor player, and it's SO Jazz is his organization. He's the one that really brought me over, and then I got to teach. I mean, I taught, and I had students that I've known over years.
Mm.
I mean, this last June, I went to record with two different students, with Sylvek and also with Bartek Schwantek. He's a bass player. Now, I've known Bartek since maybe 2004 or something like that.
Oh,
I mean, he was a youngster in that, and he's finished school. Now he's teaching at the Conservatory of the Arts in Stetson, and he's a peer. So I did a recording with him, and I'm blanking on her last name. I got to get her name straight because she's important too, because Sylvek, Joanna, and Bartek were my first Washboard XT band.
Okay.
I played Washboard and we did tours in Poland.
Oh, wow, really? I didn't know that you were with the washboard in Europe. It's like,
yes, Poland did.
man.
Sylvek gave me a lot of opportunity to do that. There's a coffee company that's Columbus Coffee. It's like Starbucks.
Mhm.
Several and all big. We did a tour, Poznan, Warsaw,
Krakow, probably.
yeah, a whole bunch
All
of
these places. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
a lot of them. And so that helped me get this. That gave me some, experience of playing out, doing the board there. Poland has been very instrumental in washboard development. And
the books will say that, like from 100 years from now, in the development of washboard in improvised music, Poland played an important role. I was like, what?
yeah, it's it's kind of amazing to me, this whole experience, because I was 67 years old when I got introduced to the board playing it that first time.
Bro, yeah.
I'd already been playing, for all my life, just like that. And all of a sudden this happens, and it's like I have a new career and a new energy.
Yeah.
So, I ended up hanging out. I mean, one of the things in Poland was I was hanging out with youngsters, younger kids, and having that energy,
Yeah.
and then having the board happen where I feel like a beginner again. I'm learning again. It's I'm looking to get there we go. Joanna Gaida. She's a great piano player. She's head of the music department at the Conservatory of the Arts in Stetson now.
Yeah.
And I knew her before she got married. Now she has 2 kids and her husband, and I know the whole family and her mother. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I really didn't appreciate it until kind of recently, that I had a chance to look back.
Yeah.
And it's been music has been really, really, really good to me. I grew up on a small black college campus in Petersburg, Virginia, and I just wanted to play the. I've known playing the drums all my life.
Mm.
I forgot my first drum when I was 2,
Okay.
and it took me a year to convince him that I really wanted a drum. I had to play pots and pans first, and do that, and then I convinced my father I really want. He got me one for Christmas, and it was a toy drum, but the band director at the college took an interest in me, and he got me a 13 by 3, I think, snare
Snare
drum.
drum. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and this is the old snare, calfskin heads. I was 4 years old when I tucked my first calfskin head.
Wow.
You know, yeah, my father and I, we broke it, the head broke, so we had to tuck it. And the snare side was thinner. That's the one that broke the most. But I remember having soaked the skin in the bathtub, and then getting the back of a spoon and tucking the head in,
Man. Yeah.
doing that. So I don't know life without the drum.
Yeah.
And
Imagine.
the drum took me from Petersburg, and actually the campus was its own little community because it was doing segregation. It was a black community. The doctors, dentists, the lawyers, everybody were black, and our friends and that. So I went from that little community to playing in over almost 50 countries.
Incredible.
And
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
music, yeah, music is a powerful thing.
When did you
Wow.
mentioned you were so little when you got your first snare drum, but you remember for jazz specifically or improvised music, what got you excited and when was that?
Around the same time, because there were the students, they had a jazz club, and students played
Oh,
every year in the fall, the beginning of the year. There was this freshman talent thing. So I would go and I would find out who this drummer is. And every drummer that came in, I knew who they were. And I found I remember being 4 years old. Billy Taylor was a graduate of their college. And he came and gave a concert. And they were doing at sound check in the afternoon before the concert. And I would walk in there and I looked. And I don't know who the drummer was, but he had a set of white pearl finished drums. And I remember looking up, seeing, and I saying to myself, that's what I want to do.
wow, man.
I knew that then. At the same age, when the Detroit Symphony would come, St. Louis Symphony would come, Baltimore Symphony would come and give concerts, and I would sit up in the balcony so I could see the drum and percussion section and the timpanist. And so I learned a lot by watching.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I learned a lot by watching this. And so that was the beginning. There's Dave Hoggart was probably, I think he was the most talented drummer to come on the campus during my time there as a kid. And I remember his freshman year, and he came and played. He could play. And he was a percussion major. Most of the other drummers they played, but they were other majors.
Yeah.
But he was a percussion major. And he was really kind. I bugged him. I hung out. And he would show me stuff. I'm the first parallel. Radamiku, he showed, stuff. He showed me that. And when I was 10 years old, in the 4th grade, Dr. F. Nathaniel Gatlin, who was the band director, who gave me my first drum, he allowed me to join the college concert band. So I would start out from 4th grade until I went on to the 8th grade to high school. I was off campus. I played with the concert band, and we were playing Tchaikovsky's transcriptions and the Beethoven transcript. So to me, I wanted to be a musician, and being a musician meant you played all kinds of music. I didn't want to be a jazz musician. I wanted to be a musician
Yeah.
who played jazz, who played classical, who played R&B. I just wanted to play music. That was my goal. And I, as a little kid, in that time, up until 8th grade, I had went to high school in the city for 1 year, and then I got sent to a prep school in Connecticut because my parents, and this was kind of the kids of my age on the campus, we all ended up going to prep schools up in Connecticut or Massachusetts. My brother went to one called Mount Hermon, which is the same school that my grandfather went to
Mm-hmm.
back in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
1880s, I guess he was there. So my brother went there, but I ended up going to the Kent School, which was in Kent, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And but I got there, and there really wasn't any music. So the only music was the church, the choir. It was an Episcopal school, so church, and that was a mandatory thing. So the only music I could find was sing. So I started singing. I sang in the choir for a year, and then I got in the glee club. And so I sang in the glee club. I got my first drum set when I was 14. I went back home in the summer and worked on the college farm all summer and saved the money, and I got my first drum set was a bass drum, a snare drum, and a mounted tom, and one cymbal. One cymbal. That's where I started. But I got that, and then I got it shipped up to Kent. So I had the drums there. The second year there, they hired a music teacher to give students private lessons. And so I was thinking, I'm gonna go up here and I can get some lessons. And the teacher was the piano player. And he told me, "Man, you know more than I do. I can't teach you anything on that." So I just went on my own, and ended up that the teacher and I and another student, we gave a couple of jazz concerts because he did play some jazz. And there was a student that played, two students that played guitar. And that, so there, I did get to play a little bit there, but it wasn't as much as till I graduated from there, and I went back home and went to undergraduate at Virginia State, where I'd grown up. There I got to play a lot. And then that's where I started really doing gigs, jazz gigs professionally. And they weren't jazz gigs; they were gigs that we played for dances.
Yeah, sure.
Because live music was the sort of music for dances at that time. They had little record players, but they weren't. Volume wasn't enough for that, and we just played. And so we had to play different styles of music. We'd play Bird, we'd play a Max Roach tune, but we also played James Brown. We'd also play other R&B and blues. We had to play all styles. And there is something about playing for people when they dance that you learn. And it was the beginning drummers, the beginning of jazz, and they played for dancers.
Yeah.
Even Charlie, Bird, when he played for dancers, he was doing all that notes while people danced.
Yeah, Kansas, and stuff, yeah. Actually.
And they kind of separated from dance and became, a concert hall kind of thing, club thing. But it was jazz. Originally, it was dance music.
Yeah.
And there's something about how you play the time that you do. You have to keep it. It's got to have a flow so people can know. And then you play on top of keeping this. And that, I think, I've noticed in later generations, it got lost. And I noticed it in the music. that it doesn't have, yeah. So dance music, and that, what I also call it, music based on the heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's um, based on the heartbeat. It comes from dance, and so music, drums, music, and dance to me go together, and I've been fortunate that I played, and even in the '70s, I was still playing for dances, cabarets they call them in there. People would bring their food and their beer and their wine and all that, and they set
Yeah.
it up, and we play for it. They'd dance in it. But then the late '70s, the drum machine to me is what changed the music.
Mm.
And not so much that the drum machine itself was bad, but the executives producing the music and with the recordings, they started using the drums machine instead of people. And then they said, "Oh, I can use the synthesizer to sound like
Yeah.
strings."
Yeah.
It's not strings, and so they got to pocket more money in doing that. But that source became what I, you know, synthesized, and so, and the pulse and the synth is not related to the human heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I'm old school. There are kids who that's all they know, and they're very comfortable with it, and they've connected their hearts to it. But um, I come from where it was the human heart, the human element,
Yeah.
and that to me is the human element was central. And I like, I look at Stevie Wonder in the '70s when these instruments were first coming in. He took that technology
Yeah.
and humanized it.
Yeah. True.
He made it relate to the heartbeat. So it isn't that technology can't do it. You just have, the person using it has to have that intention and do it. And I put in the hip hop, some of the guys, they took that knowledge and
Yeah.
they made it human. So but there's a lot of it out there that doesn't have, they didn't take the time to put the human element in it. And that bugs me.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
That's my own personal prejudice.
No,
But
it's true. Yeah. Make complete sense. What, especially when I listen to your drumming, like the unidentifiable, like the last record you did with Matthew, you play like improvised music, and it's still dance. I mean, it's, it has this somewhere behind there, even if it's on a cymbal or somewhere. It's like it's there. What you're saying now, it's
thank you.
it, it's always, even
Thank
with
you.
Henry Threadgill or Billy Harper or whoever. Like it's you seem to have that somewhere engraved. This, yeah.
Yes, I believe in that.
Yeah.
That the sound and the time, it should have movement.
Mm.
And I also think you should be making some kind of musical statement,
Yeah.
not just keeping time or just playing what comes to you. You should play what comes to you in the musical context for me.
Mm.
And so I try to play in statements, like I'm saying something rather than just and I don't know, that's my own personal prejudice. I don't speak for anybody but myself.
Oh, sure. No, I wanted to ask you this. You mentioned Billy Harper, and I guess, you mentioned you went to Poland 1980 the first time, or 79. So how did you get involved with Billy? I mean, I know you did so many tours with him later throughout. And
I was with him for 26 years. And
how did you start playing?
It happened this way. I moved to Philadelphia in Labor Day of 1980, September 1980. And I was there for about a week, and I had a gig in Philadelphia that I'd already booked before I moved up. And it was a gig that I had Kenny Barron and Buster Williams come down.
Oh man,
Because
really?
Kenny's from Philly and Buster's from Camden. And they hadn't played in Philly in years. And I knew Kenny Barron because I played with him in Color Knight, trumpet player in Philadelphia, very close friend. Um, he would bring Kenny down and play concert at least twice a year, you know. So I got to know Kenny there, and then I saw him in New York when I go up. And that, well, at the gig, they came down. Buster Williams told me, said, Billy Hart says, call Billy Harper. And he gave me Billy Harper. When you get back, call Billy Harper. And said, Billy said, make sure you call him. I said, okay. Well, I ended up doing that. And Harper said, oh, well, we're going to have a rehearsal. Can you come to this? I said, yeah, I'll go to the rehearsal. And I didn't realize that he was getting ready to leave in a week and a half to go on this tour. I just was playing and kind of auditioning just for the band. But then we do that, and he calls me later and says, well, I want you to go on this tour with me. We're going. But I have to talk to the other drummer first.
Oh shit.
Yeah, right. I said, oh, well, okay, whatever. And he did and called back and said, okay, you're on, we're going. And then when I came back sometime later, I found out that the drummer was a friend of mine. I knew him. But he was cool. He never gave me any static about it. And a really good guy. Alan Nelson. He's from Trenton, New Jersey. He played, Hannibal, Marvin Peterson?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he played with Hannibal.
Oh, okay.
He played with Hannibal. So, so that's how I got with Harper. And then we just, and the first time I've heard Billy Harper play was at the Vanguard in the summer of 1969. It was,
69,
I
yeah.
had a,
Wow.
yeah, in 69, I came up to spend I was teaching in college in North Carolina, a black college there, Livingstone College. And I had this friend that I had met before I went to graduate school in Richmond named John Baker. No blood relation, but he was a trumpet player in Richmond, and he had a band, a jazz band. He was working in a club 2 nights a week. And I went and I had moved back to Richmond from out in the country of Virginia my first year teaching, and I quit teaching. Said, I can't do this. So I moved back to Richmond, and I had my daughter and my wife. We came back to Richmond. I ended up getting a job selling insurance, life and health insurance for Aetna Life Insurance. But it was a training program, so I knew I had money whether I sold anything or not. And in Richmond, I heard about this band playing at the club, so I went down and on a Sunday night and sat in, and they were playing hip tunes. They were playing, because John would go back to New York, and he knew cats, and he had come down and played. We were playing tunes. I was playing Love Supreme and never heard the record.
Oh wow, man.
He brought Neighborhood, and so that Joe Henderson tunes. It was the real deal. I really look back and say I really was lucky that I was playing with him. But I got the gig the next weekend. I was on the gig, and we did that for 2 years. A great piano player named Joe Bonner. He's from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, a homeboy of Newman. Tenor sax player. Come on, his name will come to. really great. If I could, his name will come to me and you'll know him. But he came to Virginia State where I was there, and he came for summer camp. My, I guess it was my senior year at the college, and that's when I met him, and he could play, and he had been going to New York. Harold Vick,
Harold Vick, oh sure, yeah, man.
Harold
Yeah.
Vick, tenor player, great,
Among-
nice person, really good. And so he would go up there and stay with Harold and come back, and he would join the band with John Baker's band, and we were playing tunes. He wrote pretty tunes, but he McCoy, Herbie tunes, Dolphin. I was playing Dolphin Dance and Maiden
Mm.
Voyage. Never heard the record, but because Joe brought him in and we played him, was that, and people were saying. I remember a couple said, "Oh, you like Elvin Jones?" I never heard Elvin. I didn't know. I knew the name, but I hadn't even, at that time, I hadn't even heard the record. I was just playing it, but you know, I feel like, and I recognize that I'm part of what I call the three tribe. Elvin to me is part of the three tribe. There were a couple of other drummers that they felt comfortable playing in three and
Mm.
or three and two and
Yeah,
three,
yeah.
that cross thing. I can't think his name. It's Switzerland. He lives in Switzerland now.
A drummer?
He's a
A drummer?
drummer. Yes, yes. He's older than I am, or a little bit older than I am. Great drummer, and he's been playing in Europe for a long time.
Not Andrew Cyril. No, right? No.
No, Andrew is a friend. No,
Mm.
he'll come. Maybe he'll come. He'll come to me. Mm.
It'll pop up.
But yeah, I think so. Once I heard Elvin, I understood why they said, but I wasn't trying to copy him until I heard him, and then I tried to copy him. But, so that at that time, I was playing this club. We were there Friday, Saturday for like 2 years straight with Joe Bonner playing what I call the real music.
Yeah.
You know, not just standards.
Yeah.
We were playing, you know, originals. I also went and joined the Richmond Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It was the beginning of the integration of that. My percussion teacher, who was actually a violinist, he was one of the first to integrate the thing. And there was he was a violinist, the oboist, who was a student. When I was a kid, I knew him because I hang around the band and I was always around it. But he was one of the first. He integrated the orchestra, and clarinetist who was head of the music department, who gave me my first drum. He was there, and so I ended up. I called him up and said I want. And they said, "Well, come to the rehearsal." So I went to the rehearsal, and after the rehearsal, I was in. And that was great. It was really great to be able to play a symphony gig, concert, and then go to the club and play a jazz gig.
Man,
One
yeah.
right behind the other. That was that was heaven.
Yeah. Both sides.
It was music. It was like being a musician, you know, being a musician. You play this, you play that. Then you got, other R&B, dance music
Yeah.
with other bands. You still freelance as well, but those are kind of highlights to me. And one highlight, Aaron Copland came and guest conducted
Oh, wow. Man.
at the Richmond Symphony, and that was great. He was great. And there was the head of the percussion section was Chuck Drysdale, and he was the timpanist. And when we did Appalachian Spring, the score calls for a field drum. It doesn't say what size. It doesn't say what kind of snares. Because in those days, you could have wire wound silk, you could have gut snares, you could have a combination, and you could have just wire. So, Chuck asked him, well, it doesn't say what kind of field drum. It says, what size, what kind of snares, man? And he said, I don't care just as long as it sounds right. And that to me was the greatest answer, and an answer that, particularly for percussionists, it gives you the freedom to try stuff. They don't care what it does, just as long as it sounds right. And violinists can't do that. As an individual, violinists can't do that. But that was, I will never forget that. And just as long as it sounds right. And that's part of where it is in jazz and improvised music.
Yep.
You had the freedom just to make it sound right. Sound and feel right, all of that is together. But that was a kind of freedom that I experienced in classical music.
Yeah.
That's very rare.
Rare, yeah.
Very rare. Very rare.
Yeah.
So that ended up, I was able to leave teaching and go to insurance. And then in 1968, I got an opportunity to go to graduate school. And during that time, it was federal funding, so I got paid to go to school, which really was a real big help. I got a monthly stipend and went to East Carolina University. And that before I started school, the band with John Baker's band, we played at the Hampton Jazz Festival, which was, at that time, it was Newport traveling.
Mm-hmm.
It was a George Wein production, and we played on Saturday afternoon, and then I got to play as a part of a jam session, and it was my first time being behind the stage where all the musicians hung out.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, Archie Shipp was there. Howard Johnson was playing with her. And I saw Howard, but I knew who he was, but we didn't really meet. Nina Simone was there, Sly and the Family Stone was there, Gary Burton was there, and Gary Burton, Jimmy Smith was there, and I got to sit in on the jam session where Jimmy Smith was playing organ.
Oh really? Oh man.
and Howard was playing tuba. It was really, but being backstage and hanging out there, I finally found where I belonged. First time in my life, I said, this is where I belong. But it took me a while to get to try to do that. I got to go graduate school. I went to graduate school. I ended up teaching in college at Livingstone College for a while, for like 4 years. And then I got to move. First step was to move from Salisbury, North Carolina to Wilmington, Delaware, which ended up being great because I got to play a lot. When I was teaching, there really wasn't no playing. I didn't really do any gigs. I played with records in the house, and I would take my drums and drive to Winston-Salem, Winston-Salem a couple of times, but also to Greensboro, North Carolina. It was like 50-mile drive. Take my drums and set them up next to the drummer that was in the jam session. I checked all right. He said, cool, I could do it. Because that was the only time I got to play my drums and play with people, So I had to do that. So I did that for 4 years, and I finally gave myself a gift and quit left the college and got to Delaware. And Delaware was great. So I was timpanist in the Wilmington Symphony Orchestra or
Mm.
Delaware Orchestra. I, I played it for the Wilmington Ballet. I played in jazz groups, freelance jazz groups. And Wilmington had a good jazz community in there. You know, it got famous because of Clifford Brown. But I worked and knew and did workshops, studied with his Clifford Street teacher, Boise Lowry. Boise was tenor player and high school teacher, band teacher at one time when Clifford went. And he took Clifford on his wing, and he knew it. He was very kind. We used to go basement of his house on Saturdays. Bunch of musicians in Wilmington and some from Philly would come, and we would play and
Oh, beautiful.
to learn changes and stuff with Boise. So Wilmington gave me a lot of playing, jazz, classical. That when Broadway shows would come, traveling shows would come, and they need another percussion, so I ended
yeah.
up doing that and doing that. And then I was teaching in Wilmington jazz workshop at the high school in Wilmington, and I met Jean Vernor, as a trumpet player, who was also teaching at Widener University. It was Widener College then, in Chester, PA. It's a great trumpet player, arranger and all. And through him, I also met Zach Zachary, who is an alto player. The three of us were teaching in this workshop for the high school. And through Zach, I got to meet musicians in Philadelphia and did gigs with him, cabarets and stuff like that. And Johnny Lynch, who is a trumpet player, Johnny Lynch used to play in Disney's big band and then came back to Philly and stayed in. So he had a big band, and he was the band leader at the house band at a place called the Club Harlem, which was in Atlantic City, the old Atlantic City, in the black section of Atlantic City. And that was a place we worked 10 to 4, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.,
Oh, wow.
7 days a week. 7 days a week. And I used to drive from Wilmington, it's about an hour and a half drive.
Oh, shit. Wow.
And do that every day. But it gave me a chance to play. I went from the drought of not playing to playing a lot. And I was the symphony, all of that, and that's what I really needed. And Club Harlem with Johnny Lynch, I got to play with Billy Eckstein. I met Charlie Purcip there.
Really? Oh, wow.
Because Charlie was Billy Eckstein's music director at that point. And Billy was there, and the house band was ready to start rehearsal with go over Billy's music. But Purcip hadn't gotten there yet, so they wanted to start. So I ended up playing the drums until Purcip got there. And this was like my first couple of weeks of doing this. And these old trumpet players gave me a hard time because they kept complaining, I can't feel the wind, I can't feel the wind. And it was just a ballad, and they would give me a hard time. Then Purcip comes in, and they start the same thing. Instead of playing time, he's floating. And the horns, trumpets just got on, and he stopped the thing and said, I ain't playing no time for you. You ought to be able to keep your own time. So he didn't bother me anymore after that. And he didn't. But that was, he came in and didn't even know who I was, and we only met. He just, y'all messing with this young guy. Leave him. And then when I got to New York and got to talk to him, he was really good, very kind to me. Very, very nice. So,
How was your entrance to the New York scene when you said you played already so many concerts in this period we're talking about now? And when you came to New York, was there a big transition for you or not really? I mean, did you know many people?
Well, no, because I would go to New York, and I moved from Wilmington after 2 years to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And in Philadelphia, um, I played. There was so many great musicians in Philadelphia. Some the younger ones that you hear now, I knew them before they got there. Uh, I used to play with John Blake, violinist, and his brother Alan played keyboards. A flute player named Leslie Burrs, Tyrone Brown, bass player. Just there's so many I can't, Color Night, Takuma.
Oh, Jamaluddin.
Jamaluddin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Before he was that, I mean, we played together. Mike Richmond.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia has so many, particularly bass players.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, bunches and bunches of bass players. Electric, acoustic, whatever, they had them. I was in Jimmy Merritt's band. You know Jimmy Merritt?
Yeah, sure.
Played with Max
Sure.
and
Sure. Really?
I played with
Incredible.
He had the hardest music I ever had to play.
Really? Wow.
Yes, because he based his stuff using the Schillinger system. I don't know, you don't know the Schillinger system. It's more mathematical formula of organizing music. Henry Mancini used it to write all that film music and all that. I mean, the things you can do, this, and you know it's going to sound right. You know it's going to sound good. And
yeah.
Stuff that, but Jimmy had stuff where each instrument was playing. I had to do stuff that was 5 against 4 and patterns, really not just keeping time, playing patterns, while the piano playing might be doing 7 against 8 or
stuff like that. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Stuff like and the horn tenor. He was playing bass. Comar Duncan was the piano player, and Odine Pope.
Oh, yeah.
Was
really?
Yeah. See, I had some great experience in Philadelphia.
Oh, man.
Playing that, and everybody was. It was after rehearsals, your brain was head was tired, but it was really great. And just Philadelphia was really, Kenny Barron. I just mentioned him. Philly Joe. I got to meet Philly Joe.
Oh, wow.
Because he was played at the Club Holland first, and then this lady named Sumi Tonoka, piano player. She's in New York now too, but I played with her in Philly when she was first starting, and we played on a festival at not Penn, Drexel University, and we played. And after we finished playing, I get up from the drums and I turn and I see Philly Joe over there on the wing with his legs, feet up in a chair, sitting back, and he'd just been watching me the whole time. Oh, but he was so good to me. He said, "Oh, you can play them drums, little young man." I said, "Thank you." And then I met him again. I saw him a lot after that. And actually, I had a girlfriend that knew him and his wife, and so Philadelphia was really, really great. It was really great. And then I started going up to Philly, going to New York. I drive from Philly to go hear music and hang out a little bit. And I'm not sure. I don't remember how I got this gig with Lou Donaldson. But I ended up doing a tour with Lou Donaldson.
Really? I didn't know that. Really?
Dr. Lonnie Smith.
Oh, man.
And Melvin Sparks,
Lawrence Sparks, yeah.
and oh, come on, man. Trumpet player. Oh, bald-headed, yeah, light-skinned trumpet player whose name I can't. Oh man, see if he'll come. But we did. We played in. Went to Memphis, Ohio, Cleveland
Oh,
somewhere, and Detroit, and then played Blues Alley with a different band, but it was Lou, piano player that he always worked with, the blind piano player, and bass player from San Francisco, the Bay Area. But Lou Donaldson was real. I learned a lot playing with him.
yeah, I can imagine.
That
Yeah.
was before. That was before I came.
Yeah.
And then also I had a special experience. A great drummer from Wilmington. When I first moved to Wilmington, I was walking down the street and I heard this drum and I said, "Damn, who is this sounding like Tony Williams?" And his name was Wilby Fletcher. He was like 15 years old. Killing. Oh man, was that. So we really got to be friends, and he was playing with Ahmed Jamal, and I was in this is when I moved to Philadelphia years later. He had gone, will be gone. He played with McCoy,
Wow.
Tyner. He played with Ahmed, and he needed a sub with Ahmed because Wilby was going with Harry Belafonte. Yeah. So I had this. I drove up to New York on a Saturday, and we had a little afternoon rehearsal and played that night with Ahmed. And I can't remember who the bass player was.
Oh wow.
Can't remember his name. And it turned out cool. I got a call from Ahmed later, but I wasn't home because I was on my first tour in Europe. And so Peyton Crosby
Yeah. Oh
ended
yeah.
up being the drummer, right?
Yeah.
Peyton ended up getting the gig that I couldn't because I wasn't there, and he stayed with him for like 10 years or something, you know. And
Oh,
never got it. Didn't I wasn't supposed to have the gig, but
yeah.
I sure had the experience.
Oh man, that's incredible.
So
Yeah. It's,
that was even before I got to New York, and then getting to New York. Those people I knew, you know, and I knew Billy Hart. I'd actually met Billy Hart when I was still in Philadelphia, and when he was playing with McCoy.
yeah.
Back out, I saw him a couple of times down there, but the last time, and it may have been his last gig with McCoy. And he didn't know it then. I found out later when I saw him in New York that that was the last gig. But Billy was in it, so Billy got hooked me up with Billy Harper and that. And I'm trying to remember how I got connected with Sam Rivers, but I don't know. I don't remember how that. But Sam was another
Yeah. How was that like? I
great
mean,
musician.
he's one of my favorite composers. It's like,
Well, I first started playing with him in New York, in a trio and a quartet.
oh wow.
Quartet with guitarist. Oh, come on. See if his name will come.
With Sam?
And Joe Daly was playing too.
Yeah. Oh shit. I'm also blanking. Yeah.
Oh, I can't. Maybe his name will come to me. Oh, I can see him. Marvin Horn. Marvin Horn. There was Marvin, Joe Daly, Sam, and myself.
Wow, man.
And it was cool. And then we played a couple of trio gigs with just Sam, Joe Daly, and myself.
That wasn't recorded, right?
No,
Oh
I don't
man, that's
think
a shame. Oh shit.
anything was recorded when I played with him.
Oh man, that's a shame.
Then I did a tour in '82 did a tour, 8 weeks with Sam.
Wow.
Rael Wesley Grant was the bass player, and Kevin Eubanks was guitarist.
Really? Wow,
And
man.
I knew Kevin because I knew Kevin from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And Robin. I knew Robin, and I played with Sumi Tanoka in Philadelphia. So I knew Robin, and then Kevin was in Boston at the time in school, but he'd come home. So I knew Kevin and Robin. But with Sam, the band met at the airport, JFK.
Wow.
I knew Kevin, I knew Sam. Yes. And Sam knew me, and he knew Rael. Sam didn't know Kevin, but Rael knew Kevin because they were in Boston together. So the band meets, and we go and hit.
Wow.
And
Man.
it was really, really interesting with Sam. No matter what instrument he played, there was never any drop
Yeah.
in the level of quality. It was just up, high, 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 high. You know, with piano, with the cello, the bass, clarinet, soprano, tenor, and it was amazing. And we'd play for an hour and a half, 2 hours straight,
Oh, yeah.
and all this variety in that. Everybody got solo space, and I was playing with Kevin Eubanks and hearing him. He was amazing back then.
Yeah. Can you
He
imagine?
was amazing back then. It was got a lot done with Kevin on that. So Sam was a real highlight. Was a real highlight.
What was Henry
And
the same? Threadgill. I mean, I know I have the track record that you did with Henry, but like, did you play
yes,
also smaller groups with him, or?
I played with Henry with the sextet,
Yeah.
and that was two versions of the sextet, about from '87 to '89.
Yeah.
And he worked a lot. I mean, I loved Henry's music. That was another.
Yeah.
That was equally high as Sam Rivers. Sam was openly improvised. Henry's was written. It
Yeah.
sounded like it was openly improvised,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
it was specific. And it was a challenge in that, not only to read it, but then to take it off the page and make music. Henry was a great composer.
Yeah, I love. He's one of my favorites.
He's
I
a
mean, still
great,
now. Yeah. Yeah.
he's a great composer, and I learned a lot playing his music. One of the great things, we come home, we learn new music, then we go out to go to Europe for 6 weeks, and playing a lot.
Yeah.
When you come back home, you had all these new chops because the things you had to play you hadn't played
Exactly.
before.
Yeah.
You know, his voicing, because the specific symbol, Tom, this time, it was that. But once you got and were able to really play it and then expand on it, you came back. So every time we come home, you had more chops. I really, that was a very big highlight, one of the highest.
Yeah. I can
Definitely
imagine.
high.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, he's
Wow.
such a composer. I mean, did he ever tell you what to play, or like give you instructions?
Yeah, I mean, he had specific written
Written
parts.
parts. Yeah. Yeah.
Written parts. I mean, this used my classical music thing because he changed meters. You know, I I relate him to Stravinsky in that Stravinsky expanded percussion
Yeah.
because you did stuff that hadn't been done on percussion before, and you had to figure out how to do it. And I was told, I don't know, it was through Saul Goodman or Buster Bailey from the New York Philharmonic. I got to spend a week with them before I came even before I left North Carolina. But was told that Stravinsky actually went and played the parts himself
Wow,
as he
man.
was writing it. So it was playable. Henry's stuff was playable, but you had to develop the chops to do it. And that's the way Henry, and it was written specifically. So it was, playing with the sextet was great. One of the highest levels,
Yeah,
because you had this great composing and then improvising on that, and make the improvisation
yeah,
at the level of the composition. That
yeah,
was it was time, but they were great musicians.
yeah.
The first
Rag Bush and
band,
all. It's such a record, really. It's
yeah, that to me was
yeah.
that band got to be the tightest. The first band was Rasul Sadiq, Frank Lacey,
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Frank Lacey, Deidre Murray, and Fred Hopkins, and Yoran Israel was
Oh,
the
yeah.
drummer. And it was his first gig coming in from Chicago.
Oh, shit.
It was doing his first, and so it was in December. When I first played my first gig there in the city with him, and then we went out, and that band got recorded in Germany. There was a YouTube of that,
Really?
of
Oh,
a
I have to check it
gig
out.
that we did. It may have been Frankfurt. I can't remember the city, and I just discovered that a couple of years ago. I was in Boston in the train station. I was coming in, and Frank Lacey was coming out. So he said, "Hey," and he said, "Man, did you see the YouTube? There's Henry's." I said, "Oh," and so he sent me the link for that, because we didn't know it until really recently that the band had recorded.
Oh,
That was Rasul, Yoran, but also in that band, playing with Deidre Murray and Fred Hopkins.
yeah,
Fred was magnificent.
yeah. I mean,
But
such
I
player.
got to playing time with them. We got this mental lock where we always knew where we were, but you didn't have to play it. You could play anything on it. So I'd be doing something, and Fred was doing, but we were all connected. And when it came back to right on it,
Yeah,
and I hadn't had that experience with a whole rhythm section that way, where it was that locked, where you could feel it. We knew it was more than trust. You could feel it. We were locked. We were synced. And then you could play anything. And
yeah.
then come back to the time. And that was so great.
Incredible.
That was so great.
Yeah. I mean, how was it like for you playing with Henry Grimes? I mean, I have one record of
Well,
you,
with
Andrew
Henry,
Lamb.
I mean,
Speaking of
that
rhythm
was like,
sections, I mean, that's,
I played with so many great bass players.
I know.
I would have Fred, Buster Williams,
Yeah,
Jimmy Merritt, Reggie Workman, Clint Houston, Lyle Atkinson. I just so many. I didn't mention them all,
yeah,
but I really feel very fortunate. Each of them was different, and that's what I liked about that time of the music. Was everybody, the point was to have your own voice.
yeah,
You study the guys in front of you, you learn, but when you play, you had to play like you, not like somebody else. And unfortunately to me, when jazz got into the schools,
yeah,
the
yeah,
school system imposed its thing on it. And so everybody had to play the same thing. Ended up, you had to play to get out of school, so you had to sound like this, which was not the music to me,
Good, yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that has affected music that we hear now. That you know, it's hard for me to listen because I heard it when it was original. You know, I I
Yeah,
heard it when it was being created, and they all love Louis Armstrong, but not a one of them sounded like him. You know, all the trumpet players,
yeah.
Woody Shaw, Joe Newman, uh, Clark Terry.
Name it. Yeah.
It's just so many of them, you know, and each had their own voice, but they each were excellent. You know, the
Yeah.
excellence was the common denominator was excellence. Individually, they had their own sound,
Like,
their own
yeah.
voice, and that to me that's what I would like to see the music at again. I, you know, I'm an old guy now. I
Oh,
don't
come on.
feel it, but
No,
I,
you have the energy of a 23-year-old or something when I hear you talk now. It sounds so great. It's beautiful.
yeah, I feel blessed that I have that, and I think the washboard really is helped me keep it.
Yeah,
Washboard
I
has
believe
given
it.
me
Yeah.
that energy because you know I'm learning new stuff, doing the electronics, and that I have my teacher dealing with electronics is Brandon Ross. You know Brandon?
Brandon, oh, we did this interview with Brandon like 3 months
Yeah.
ago. But he's just such a nice
Ah,
guy, really.
well,
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Oh,
I asked him if I could do it. I even actually tried to get a grant so we could have a block of time
oh
together,
man, it's
but
beautiful.
didn't get the grant. But he still is. I've just done individual lessons with him.
Oh, really?
But
Oh, wow. Okay.
he helped him. Yeah, he's great.
He's
He's great.
amazing. Yeah, I love his
Yeah,
composing and
yeah.
playing. Such a player.
We played with Deidre. Fred and Deidre had a quartet with Brandon, and I played um, with him with that, and also with Butch Morris.
Yeah, I
And
think there's a
two times.
footage of you with Brandon.
Yeah, in that black,
Yeah,
what
I
do you
don't
call
know.
it? Black February or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah, and yeah,
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Beautiful.
we had that time. Yeah, so all of that music, and to me, all of those experiences are part of what the washboard is for me now.
Yeah,
You know, that's why I feel like I can play all that kind of different kinds of music because it isn't the instrument; it's what you come to play on
exactly.
it.
Yeah, true.
You know, and that's what I think is happening. And I think I don't know of a washboard player that comes to it that brings that to the washboard.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and I feel like that. And I also I talked about playing for dances when I was first starting. I from 1989 to 2016 or something, I was with two dance companies, an African American dance company,
Oh,
Nikki D and Friends. Nikki Davison was we did this show called Dance Rhythm Dance, and it was the survey of African American, what I call it U.S. African,
yeah,
because it was enslaved Africans, not the enslaved Africans from Brazil or Jamaica but the ones from the United States. And we would start from the Middle Passage, kind of up through like in Michael Jackson, and we talk about um, what's I can't think of from early 1900s. He brought Army Band. It'll come in later. But this whole flow,
yeah,
Duke Ellington in that time, the Harlem Renaissance period.
yeah.
Before that, Fats Waller, and that all the way up. And so that was part of my experience. And being an educator, I grew up on the campus my parents were really were great teachers. My father particularly, he was head of chemistry department, but he was really a good teacher. So I feel like I like the act of teaching. I don't like the administrative part of being in the
Yeah,
college.
yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So teaching, and I got to do that with Mickey D and friends, Mickey Davidson. And also I was with the modern dance company, Avada Dance Ensemble. And the founder of that company was Joanne Tucker. And I'm in Joanne's place now.
Mm.
I'm seeing her for the first
Oh,
time in since 2019. But she, just before COVID hit, she and her husband moved to um,
oh,
Costa Rica and their tennis, and she has this beautiful house. I feel like I'm doing a residency at the same time as visiting my friend, and
yeah.
my daughter is here with me too,
Oh, beautiful.
and that's another special time. I really am blessed to be the age that I am, feel this youthful energy, and I'm just spending time with my daughter because of the drum and music. At 68 is when I divorced and left my family because I knew my wife wasn't about me being a musician. She couldn't live that kind of lifestyle.
Mm.
But my Stephanie and I had this bond from the first moment she came out. And she used to sleep while I played drums in the living room. She would sleep on the sofa, 9 months old. And she would go to rehearsals with me when we ended up splitting just after she was 2. I split, that ended. And I really didn't live with her again until 2020.
Wow, man. Yeah.
And she asked, she bought a house and said asked me if I would live with her when I was ready to get out of New York. And her mother passed in 2015, and she's an only child, so it's just but we've been able to connect back, reinforce and grow our connection because
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I believed when she was 2 and I made that decision that I had to come to New York to figure out, see if I could do this or not. And but I believed that we would make it through, and it's turned out
Yeah.
that. And so I'm having the time of my life being with my daughter and having this new adventure with the
Yeah,
washboard.
beautiful.
And getting to meet you and talk to you.
Yeah, beautiful. Super.
So,
Great, Newman. I mean, go out there, enjoy the sun now.
Dr. Jazz.